Welcome, Initiate. The sanctioned history of the Imperium of Man rests on a single image, a silent, dying god on the golden throne of Terra. Mortally wounded by his own son, the Emperor was interred in an arcane life support system, his mind kept alive only by the daily sacrifice of 1,000 souls. For 10,000 years, this story of a martyr god has powered their starships and justified every crusade. This is the narrative every Imperial citizen knows. It is the bedrock of their reality. But in this transmission, the file doesn't close cleanly. 3 anomalies in the record that the sanctioned history cannot explain, and when you put them together, the dying god story does not hold. Silence means you can't talk. Quiet means you choose not to. The Imperial cult paints the Emperor as a comatose figure, completely incapable of communication. But the historical record does not describe a silent god. It describes a quiet one, and that difference is everything. At the peak of the Horus heresy, with demons breaching the Imperial palace and the fate of humanity hanging on a knife's edge, the Emperor was supposedly locked in a total psychic war for survival. And yet, in that critical moment, he reached out to Kai Zulain. He wasn't a Primarch, a High Lord, or anyone of consequence. He was a single man with no military rank and political power. Even while holding a demonic tide at bay across 2 planes of existence, he had the capacity for deliberate, targeted communication.
Dave, that was when the Emperor was at full capacity, and before the fight with Horus. That's different.
And I will tell you, Initiate, that you are right. So let's go to the 41st millennium, where the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes receives guidance from the Emperor himself. Cryptic prophecies of the Emperor's tarot give direction to the High Lords of Terra and across the galaxy. His powers manifest in living saints and divine interventions, reaching into the lives of specific, chosen individuals. This is clearly not the behavior of an unconscious, fading mind. This is the behavior of someone who is listening, watching, and choosing, with extraordinary precision, might I add, who hears him and when. He is clearly not a silent god, but if there is something I would like to ask is this: if he can speak, or to choose better words, can communicate, why does he choose not to? The second problem with the official narrative is that for 10,000 years, the Imperium has operated on the assumption that their god is fading. The sacrifice of 1,000 psychers a day is a desperate measure to keep a dying light from going out entirely, but the evidence points in the exact opposite direction. The Emperor's power is growing. The Emperor is a perpetual. His own nature allows regeneration from wounds that would permanently kill any other creature. The Golden Throne sustains his body, but it is not the source of his immortality. That is pretty clear. A being built for regeneration does not necessarily weaken over 10,000 years, even in confinement. When Roboute Guilliman walked into the throne room, he didn't find a fading ember. The intelligence from that encounter describes the Emperor's mind reaching out with a psychic force that had grown to terrifying new levels. Stronger, but also colder, something that had shed its patience and its humanity across 10 millennia of silent work. I would be without patience if no one scratched my nose for 10,000 years too. Then there is the Godblight incident, where Guilliman was struck down by a disease engineered in the cauldron of Nurgle himself on the plague world Iax. A spiritual weapon designed specifically to erase a Primarch's souls from existence entirely. But then, when Guilliman fell, from Terra across the breadth of the galaxy, something intervened. A direct projection of will that burned the Chaos God's work out of Guilliman's soul and pulled him back. Dear Initiate, a being barely clinging to life does not reach across the galaxy and overrule the work of a Chaos God. The foul Xenos known as the Eldari, who have watched gods be born before, believe something is gestating in the warp around the Emperor. They are not mourning a dying god. We are watching something else entirely. Which brings us to the final anomaly, the one that reframes everything else. The Emperor didn't build the Golden Throne. He found it as a relic from the Dark Age of technology, discovered buried beneath the dust plains of Asia on Terra. But the original function of it wasn't for life support, was something far more significant. The throne was designed as a psychic amplifier of unimaginable scale, a machine built to project a psyker's will across dimensions. The Emperor's intention was to use it as the engine of the Imperial Webway project, his plan to give humanity access to the Eldari's transdimensional network, creating safe travel without the warp or navigators. The individual intended to sit on that throne permanently was not the Emperor, but Magnus the Red, engineered to be the living mechanism for this machine. It is ironic that he was one of the key pieces that forced the Emperor to sit for 10,000 years. The throne's original function never changed all this time. It was built to amplify, and for 10,000 years, that is precisely what it has been doing. The life support function is real, but it is secondary, just an emergency measure grafted onto a machine with a different purpose entirely. And when you hold all three anomalies together, the sanctioned history doesn't feel very true. An entire galactic civilization with cathedrals, crusades, the Inquisition, deaths of uncountable trillions, was built on a single foundational assumption, that the Emperor is fading, and that without constant sacrifice, his light goes out. Every atrocity committed in his name, every world burned, all of it justified by the story of a dying god who needs them. But then we have a being who chooses when to speak, whose power is not fading but growing, and who sits on a machine that was never built for life support. A machine that has been broadcasting, amplifying, and projecting across dimensions for 100 centuries, fed by 10,000 years of souls. This doesn't make any sense. Unless the sacrifice was never sustenance, but fuel. Unless the Emperor's great work never ended and simply entered a phase the Imperium was never meant to understand. There are two possibilities open in this file, Initiate. Either the Emperor is a prisoner, and what bleeds through the throne is a 10,000-year distress signal that no one has been able to decode. Or he is the architect, and the Imperium's long mourning has been exactly the cover his work required. He is not dying on the Golden Throne, he is doing something on it. And the most dangerous truth in the Imperium is that the High Lords, the Custodes, or the trillions who burn their lives in his name actually don't know what it is. Submit your assessment in the channels below, Initiate, because this question remains open. This transmission is closed, but the network doesn't stop broadcasting. The next report is already waiting, Initiate, and what it contains is something the Administratum has been trying to bury for 10,000 years. If you are not yet a registered Initiate, the subscribe button is right there. The Council is watching who clicks it. Illuminati Broadcast Network, out.